Welcome to another in the series Curating Culture. I'm Georgette Magalachon Miller, Education Outreach Officer at the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Memory Bank. Today with us, we have Dwayne Lyttle, educator, museum professional, and visual arts practitioner whose work at the National Gallery of Jamaica has helped connected thousands of Jamaicans to art, culture, and heritage. We will be exploring his journey in education, his work in museum learning, and the evolving role of cultural institutions in shaping how we understand ourselves and our society under the theme Exhibitions, the Underutilized Education Resource. Little is a graduate of St. Joseph's Teachers College with a diploma in primary education. He has spent more than 2 decades working with children and young people through teaching, arts education, and community engagement. He currently serves as curatorial assistant in the education department at the National Gallery of Jamaica, where he develops educational programs, conducts research, facilitates tours, and delivers workshops that make art and culture accessible to diverse audiences. He has taught at the primary and junior high level, managed art based youth programs, and supported therapeutic arts initiatives. He co authored with Monique Barnett Davidson the paper Adopt or Perish, an assessment of emerging museum education strategies at the National Gallery of Jamaica. This examined innovative approaches to museum education and audience engagement. His insights on culture, education, creativity, and museum practice make him a compelling voice in discussions about the role of arts in national development. Please help me to welcome Mr. Dwayne Lyttle to Curating Culture.
Thank you, Georgette, for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Yes.
As was stated, my topic for today is exhibitions, the underutilized resource. And I basically want to just highlight a topic that I have been looking into for a number of years, especially more specifically after I started working at the National Gallery of Jamaica in 2011. At that time, I got the job at the National Gallery of Jamaica to be a curatorial assistant, and I had to start organizing myself to give tours. One of the things that I had as a mandate from the then head of the National Gallery of Jamaica, the Verle Poupé, who was then the executive director for the gallery. She had indicated to me that she wanted the education department, which I still work in, to come up with some strategies to better appeal to children. So the gallery at that point had summer workshops with children. A lot of the audience that comes through the gallery and requests tours are generally from the basic school level all the way up to the tertiary level, but with a greater emphasis at the primary level. So she had brought me in to make some adjustments that were more specifically attuned to children. And as a result, I started, I think one of the first things that I worked on was coming up with a different tour format than the historical tour that they had. And I came up with the Forms of Art tour. And then while doing that tour and then later working on some other educational projects like the Saturday Art Time program where I was more teaching art, I started to kind of talk with teachers as they came in. I was doing sort of indirect interviews, asking them questions. When they would call in to make a booking, try to get a sense of what did they want to achieve while being there. And over a period of time, kind of talking with them and engaging with them on that topic, I realized that a lot of them were interested in coming to museums and going to heritage sites and engaging with exhibitions that are at these various institutions. But they had a very narrow view of how they could be used educationally. And in kind of asking even more questions and doing some investigations at some of the teachers' colleges and the community colleges that have a teacher training program, and even examining my own time at St. Joseph Teachers College where I went, I realized that there were some dominant issues that were emerging, which kind of led many of the teachers to underutilize or see in a very narrow way the value of engaging with an exhibition. And one of the things that I noticed was, one, that the structure of the teacher training curriculum didn't leave enough time for a real deep dive into understanding how to use exhibitions as an educational resource. Definitely, they would have gained exposure to or mention of exhibitions in your educational technology course. If you went to a college, or you went to a college that in your teacher training course you had a general methods course, it would be mentioned there. And like myself, if you did primary education and visual arts was your practical or one of your practicals, or you definitely went to college to study visual arts, you would end up going to like the National Gallery of Jamaica. One of your field trips would be to go to the National Gallery of Jamaica. And in some cases, probably some other museum, like if you did advanced social studies or something like that. So in that regard, you got some sort of experience of going to the institution, getting some sort of a tour, asking questions, engaging with the artifacts that are there on a personal level. But in terms of breaking down that experience in a kind of educational context, there was not a deep dive into that. There was, as I said, some information. You would have received some information, and you would have probably spent a class looking at their significance, the types of museums and exhibitions that you will see, and you kind of speak a little bit about the benefit of it to students' learning experience. But looking at how would you then plan a lesson, a distinct lesson, rather than carry the children there and then allow a tour guide or a curatorial assistant to take over, or how you could carry students to an institution and utilize the exhibition for yourself as a teacher, that was very limited. And I think, as I said, because of the structure of the teacher training curriculum, there was not enough time for that. Secondly, I think some of the lecturers who, based on what I was finding from the teachers when I was speaking with them, and I spoke to a lot of teachers, you would have found out that, I would have found out that many of them had lecturers who had mentioned it, but didn't give as much detail as they would have wanted, even when they asked questions. So you get the impression that some of the lecturers were not exposed to museums, were not exposed to a lot of exhibitions, or in some instances, some of the teachers in training would say the teachers seem to have not been interested. Even some of the new teachers are teachers who had gone through college already and were now utilizing the space. Well, in the case of coming to the National Gallery, or they have gone to some other museum, they would tell you that they didn't realize that they would have to do so much work in museums in terms of, because there's an encouragement by the Ministry of Education for teachers to carry children on field trips. And a lot of the field trips that they would end up carrying them on would be to institutions like what I had mentioned earlier, museums, heritage sites, etc. And they felt like while they were in college, there was just not enough information given to them about how to utilize these spaces in a wide variety of ways. So I think in some instances, it may be the lecturers not having the exposure, not having the interest in delving into that topic. The third and final thing is that I think, and also I picked this up from some of the teachers in training, and more so the teachers who had now become practitioners. At the time when they were at college, they didn't pay it enough attention. They themselves were not that interested in learning about museums and learning about exhibitions. And as a result, they now start becoming practitioners. They are now a practicing teacher. And they have this situation where their principal is saying to them, these are the list of places that we're thinking of carrying the students to on a field trip. And more than half of that list is a museum or somewhere that has some sort of exhibition. And then the teacher realizes that they're underprepared and are then trying to offload some of their teaching responsibilities onto the curatorial assistant or the tour guide. So those for me would be some of the dominant reasons why it is underutilized. But to wrap up, in terms of just this kind of general information about this topic, I want to kind of talk about what is the benefit of learning how to use an exhibition educationally. Because what would be the purpose of me saying that it is underutilized? Why is it that I want people to utilize it even more? One of the main benefits for being able to use an exhibition educationally is, for me, one of the highest things is to be able to provide Jamaican examples for the things that you're teaching in your classroom. It is such a beauty and a joy for both teacher and student when, for example, if you're in science class and you're talking about the different type of rocks that exist in the earth. And then you can take the students, say, for example, to the Geological Museum at UWI or Natural History Museum at the Institute of Jamaica and see the different types of rocks and see the examples that exist in Jamaica. Or just to take the example of visual art. If you're in an art class and talking about portraits, you're talking about landscapes, abstract works, and so forth, and then you're able to come and see Jamaican examples of a portrait and Jamaican examples of a landscape. I think that is of supreme benefit as a Jamaican to see those examples and tie that into the general knowledge that you've been exposed to. The other thing in terms of a benefit of why you want to have an appreciation of how to use or better use an exhibition as an educational resource is that it creates a certain level of contextualization. Being in an exhibition, you're seeing multiple varieties of a particular thing. It helps you to categorize things. It helps you to put things into context in terms of time period. It helps you to assign or attach something to a maker or a person who has made something, and that gives some sort of additional contextualization, depending on the discipline that you are exploring. And the last two things that I want to talk about in terms of benefits is that it gives you a physical experience. By engaging with an object, the actual object, rather than an image or image, whether it's an illustration or a photograph, you actually see how the thing works. You actually see what the thing feels and looks like. You add another dimension like smell and so forth that you would not receive from reading a book or looking at a video. And finally, personal engagement, especially for students. Say you have a student who loves portraits, who loves a portrait, using again a visual arts example. Standing in front of an actual portrait of somebody that looks like them or looks like somebody they know from their community, or somebody that is popular or well known in Jamaica, that creates a level of connectivity with the knowledge and the embodiment of the knowledge that is priceless.
Okay.
So I hope that gives a kind of good introduction into why I think exhibitions are underutilized and why I'm pushing and encouraging for people to learn more about how to utilize exhibitions as an educational resource.
Okay, so one of the first things, well, thank you for that presentation. It's very interesting. It's not like the usual presentations that we would have. This is more on the education side, and it's very thought provoking because automatically I am thinking, what's the difference between an exhibition and a presentation, and why should teachers kind of pivot or adjust themselves differently in terms of how this becomes a learning tool?
So there are two distinct things that I would highlight in terms of differences. A presentation usually has somebody that is receiving the presentation and somebody that is giving the presentation. And in many instances, not in all, many instances, the receiver of the information can become a passive participant. They can just be there kind of just sitting and watching because it's a method that they're familiar with. There's nothing novel, there's nothing necessarily new. Definitely, I know that there are people who can give very interesting presentations. But because it's so regular, there's a tendency for the receiver to be a little bit more passive. Exhibitions create a much more engaged receiver, because first and foremost, more than likely you're going to be standing, you're going to be nearer to the actual subject that you're talking about. And sometimes because there's somebody else rather than your teacher presenting, it creates a different context that creates interest. So that's one. The other thing is that many times when presentations are happening, most times, not all the time, the thing that you're talking about, you are experiencing it in abstract. And again, when you're experiencing something in abstract, you can smell the thing. Not to say that you can do that in every museum, but in many instances you can touch the thing. In the National Gallery, you can touch the artworks, but I know that at National Museums Jamaica, they have a touch tour for the blind, so that would create a certain type of experience rather than just hearing something verbally said. Excuse me. So those would be two key things: the experiential learning and personal engagement, and the fact that exhibitions create in terms of the receiver, the student, a more active listenership and engagement with the topic or subject.
Okay, so what comes to my mind is the 5E learning model. That would include engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate.
Which the
some of those things.
Ministry of Education is
Right.
pushing.
The ministry is pushing the 5E learning model a lot, because when you speak, you are talking, when you compare the presentation to the exhibition, you are speaking more about the interactivity to get the students involved.
Exactly.
So when you say that the exhibition can be used as a learning tool, you're saying that the teacher should use it as a lesson. So it is almost the lesson for the day, and not to depend on the tour guide to make a presentation, but have them engage, evaluate, elaborate, and participate in it, not just as a fun activity, but as a lesson.
Right. So there are two things that I'm trying to say with kind of encouraging a greater use of exhibitions as an educational resource. One is that I want people to look at exhibitions not only as a recreational, a space for only recreation. It can be a space for serious learning, and learning in many different ways, not just receiving a guided tour. There are ways in which you can have a data sheet and use the data sheet in the exhibition. There are ways in which you can match a demonstration being in presence of an object. So for example, if you are learning about certain things in science, or you're studying engineering, if you go to People's Museum in Spanish Town and you're able to see a water wheel, a full-fledged water wheel, you have a better understanding of how that actually works, and what are some of the considerations you'd have to take in mind if you're going to build one. So that's one of the things that people should see exhibitions beyond just recreational. Not that we want to abandon that, because exhibitions can be a lovely recreational, going through them can be a lovely recreational activity. The second thing is that I want to highlight that, and I keep using the word educational resource, is that I want people to see the exhibition as both a body of information and knowledge, but also as the objects in the exhibition as teaching aids. Essentially, they can support whatever general information that you are looking at or presenting, but also the objects themselves can be a lesson, because in many instances, a lot of times, students are engaging with a topic in abstract. They're not necessarily seeing a physical example or a physical practice of the thing. They can watch something on YouTube. They can see something illustrated in a book. But as I said, adding that other dimension of seeing it for yourself and seeing it three-dimensionally is priceless in terms of that 360-degree full circle of knowledge. So those are the two things that I'm trying to emphasize. Move beyond just seeing it as a recreational space or experience, and also to see the exhibition as both a body of knowledge and the things in the exhibition as a teaching aid, which you can then utilize or utilize in an instructional context.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned science. Lest our viewers think that it's only about art.
Arts and the humanities.
Right, arts and humanities. So it's just how an exhibition can be used to support, not necessarily supplement, but whatever area that you're studying, whatever
Definitely.
discipline you're
Definitely.
in. One question I would want to ask, I would want you to expand a little more on the forms of art tour. You mentioned that. You give this tour at the gallery. Tell us about what that is, the forms of art tour.
So I'm glad you asked that. Well, if you Google the paper that me and Monique Barnett Davidson did, called Adapt or Perish,
An assessment of emerging
assessment of
museum
emerging
education and strategies at the National Gallery of Jamaica.
Yes, that's the full title.
Right.
If you tap onto that, you can see some information about the forms of art tour. If anybody reaches out to the gallery to do a guided tour or just to have some sort of educational experience, the information about it can be emailed to them. But I'll elaborate here so that you get a sense of what that tour involves. So the Forms of Art tour is a tour that normally lasts for anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour and about 10 minutes. It, unlike the historical tour, which is about an hour and 30 minutes, it's a much more activity-based tour. The historical tour is where you kind of give background information, give people time to look, give people time to ask questions. In the Forms of Art tour, you are not only giving background information, but you are also utilizing various teaching aids. Okay. So you utilize images of the artists, because a lot of students, they hear the name of the artist, but they've never seen images of the artist. And interestingly enough, when I started the Forms of Art tour, for some reason, I had a number of students come in and thought that all artists were white or artists were male. So I think it was an interesting thing for a number of students to see somebody that looked like them in terms of complexion, and also to see that you had female artists.
Or to think that all artists are rich.
Or to even think that all artists are rich. For example, one of the early days of doing Forms of Art tour, I had a group of students come from a community in Clarendon, and I was showing them the artwork made by a gentleman named Clinton Brown. And I told them where Clinton Brown was born, and where he lived and grew up. And they realized that, because I knew the name of the school. One of the things when I take their information, I know the name of the school. I try to get the parish and something about the community.
Yes.
And I knew that artist was living in their community at one point.
That should give them a lot
so
of
when I
pride.
told them the community that the artist was from, they were like, but hold on, that's near to us. And I was like, yeah. And I was also able to show them that some of the imagery that he used was because of the vegetation near to where he lived. So they were more cued in and tapped in to the rest of the tour because of that. All right. So we use teaching aids in terms of images of the artists. I also would use some of the tools and materials that the artists would use to make the particular artwork that we're looking at. I also do some sort of demonstrations where possible. And also I would also include quiz questions in that delivery. Okay. And also, I should add that tour, we only isolate 3 different forms or 2 different forms of art that the students can look at. So, especially for children who don't have that wide attention span, are not at that developmental level where they can handle a lot of heavy information. Just focusing on 2 minimum or 3 maximum forms and learning about who made it, learning about how to define it, learning about how it is made, and then kind of learning a little bit more about what the artist is trying to communicate. At least one work, we try to talk about what the artist is trying to communicate with the work. It created a different experience with the collection and different experience with whatever we were exhibiting at a given time. So basically, that's the Forms of Art tour in a nutshell. In terms of time, as I said, 45 minutes to hour and 10 minutes long. Usually focuses on 2 or 3 different forms of art. And in terms of how it is executed, we utilize a number of teaching aids like images of artists, tools and materials used by artists to produce various types of artwork. And also there are some quiz questions that are involved in it as well. So that creates a different kind of experience for the students.
Okay, so as it concerns the teachers, is there any kind of training or workshop around using exhibitions?
So I'm glad you asked that, because once I started collecting the data and refining the tour types and also coming up with educational, next thing was to come up with some other programming that would help especially teachers better know how to access and utilize the exhibitions that we would mount, that is the temporary exhibitions, and how to utilize the permanent exhibition area. So one of the programs that I came up with, apart from going on outreach to teachers' colleges and talking to teachers and inviting them to come, one of the things that we did was to do we developed a teacher seminar. The first one that we had was in 2015. The last one that we had was in 2023. And we also, during 2020, during COVID, when we were not able to receive guests into the gallery, we did a teachers webinar, which is still online. It is at our blog. If you Google NGJ blog or National Gallery of Jamaica blog and look for the search icon, I think if you're on a laptop or a desktop, it's in the top right-hand corner. On a phone and on a tablet, it is in the top left-hand corner. Once you tap in that and type in teacher seminar, no, type in teachers webinar, the link should come up. And you can also go to the National Gallery's YouTube page and look for teachers webinar there as well. So basically the webinar was live streamed, and we gave presentations looking at how to utilize exhibitions in the development of a lesson. You know, the exhibitions and your lesson design was, I think, my presentation. And then we had another presentation looking at the different services that we offer. If it is that you just don't want to do a tour, you don't necessarily want to engage with an exhibition, but you want to talk about other things, because we offer like study sessions. We also do outreach, you know, so different things may suit you as the teacher. And then there's a video that was available that looked at education through the museum experience, that persons could tap into to kind of get an introduction to the education department at the gallery and the services that we offer. So that when we first started the teacher seminar, we were only focused on teachers in training and persons that were studying visual art. By 2023, we invited not only teachers in training, but people who were practicing teachers and also persons who were teaching in any discipline, because we really wanted to focus on how you can use the exhibition for your lesson, rather than just appeal to visual arts teachers. And basically, due to a number of things, we've not been able to have the seminar live, you know, face-to-face, but we always direct people to the webinar where all of the information is detailed there, and we direct people to the video museum through the education through the museum experience. And any follow-up that they want to do, then they could call us or organize. If you are a lecturer at a college, you can organize a small workshop at the gallery, because we do have a space for that. So basically, by doing that, we exposed attendees or persons attending the workshop to the National Gallery of Jamaica, because some of them don't know that it exists. Some of them were not aware that Jamaica had a National Gallery. Then after that, we would look at how you utilize the exhibition in your lesson design. And then the last part would be a practicum, where we break them off into groups. They're given a particular artwork to collect information on. And then in terms of how they would disseminate that information, they're given different methods in terms of how they can deliver the information. And basically they do that presentation with their group, and then we give them an assessment at the end. And then they also evaluate the entire experience.
So would it be oversimplifying to say that you're teaching them how to teach about art?
On one level, for especially for those who are already art teachers and that's their discipline,
Oh,
definitely
okay,
it's giving
okay.
them an opportunity. It's more so giving them an opportunity how to use one a specific work in the national collection, or how to use an exhibition generally to deliver a lesson, and in particular a visual arts lesson. For
Is
those who
there
are not visual arts teachers or don't teach that discipline, it's really showing you how an exhibition can provide you with additional learning opportunities beyond the classroom.
is there any way that you were able to measure? Well, I don't know if you have repeat teachers, like some that were a part of the webinar seminar, if they would have, reported to the gallery that, oh, I use these methods in class, the exhibition, and we saw improvements, or they were able to just use it as a teaching tool. Or
Right.
also, do you have teachers calling to ask for this information? How can I use an exhibition as a part of my teaching?
So to answer to your last question, yes, we do. People who became aware of or familiar with the webinar, or even just become aware that we do a teacher seminar, they have called and one, find out how they can be a part of the seminar when we're having it, or they've asked if they can bring a small group of their teachers in training to do
Okay.
a sort of small workshop. So I think in one instance, when we were coming out of COVID now and we were going back to work directly, we could interact, we could take visitors in. Somebody from a particular institution had called us who is doing teacher training for visual arts teachers, had said she had learned, she had seen the webinar, she had watched it. She was so sad that there was not the practicum part, because we had mentioned that, normally we would have done this face to face. And she wanted to know if her students, she had a set of probably about 15 or 20 students, could come, if there was a space that they could get some aspects of the webinar and then get the opportunity to do the practicum. And we did make that arrangement. Now, in terms of the first part of your question, in terms of some sort of measurement or evaluation. So as I mentioned, at the end of each teacher's seminar, we would give out, we didn't do this for the webinar, I don't think we did this for the webinar, but for the physical teacher seminar, we gave out evaluation sheets at the end, and we used that to improve upon and to assess what we had done with that particular seminar. Additionally, we were grateful in this regard that a number of the either lecturers or teachers in training kept in contact with us. So we would see somebody, so for example, we would see somebody come to a webinar this year, and then 2 years after they're now out of college,
Yeah.
and they've brought their students
Right.
to
That kind
the
of
to the
thing.
National Gallery to give a guided. They're doing the
Right.
tour themselves,
Right.
or they're doing a class with 2 or 3 works in the space. So before they would have told you that. So like you'd buck them up in the space, and they're like, "Oh, Mr. Little, you are the person that did the presentation.
Yeah.
You and they would list out some of my other colleagues, like Monique or Crystal Clayton Wallace, who was with us at the time. And she would say, "Oh, when I came to the seminar, I just thought that you could come here and just give tours. And if you come and do a tour, you have to do a tour of everything. I didn't know that you could just isolate a set of
Yeah.
works just by the technique or by the artist or by the subject
Right,
matter.
right.
Or I could just look on one work, or I could just look at one section of the gallery." By coming to the webinar, it showed me the different ways in which I could use the exhibition. Some of them were not even aware that the exhibition space has in it information devices. Because one of the things that we looked at is looking at what is the structure of an exhibition.
Yeah.
You look at the physical structure, you look at the intellectual structure. And by understanding that, you have a better way of manipulating and utilizing an exhibition for various disciplines, and also in various ways in terms of your instructional methodology. So yeah, we've seen persons who have come into the space, people who have actually called us and updated us. In some instances, people have gone abroad, because a number of teachers have left Jamaica and gone to other parts of the world, especially the US. And I've seen them on vacation, or they've sent an email saying, "Hey, I in the state that I am in, I am forced to have to take the students to a museum. And because of the seminar, I knew how to engage with
Right.
the education department at the museum, because again, many of them who had come to the seminar didn't know that the National Gallery of Jamaica had an education
Had an
department,
education.
didn't know that a number of museums in Jamaica, they have some sort of education officer or a department that you can engage with. Well, especially the government ones. And she was like, oh, yeah, I called and I asked for the education person. I made sure I organized my information that I could have a good conversation on the phone, and I knew what was possible. And then after that, I could call back and ask for a specific service. Or I also did a visit, because we also encourage person to do site visits.
Right.
I also did a visit and looked at the space and walk it through, so I understand, what they could manage, how much of it they could see, or what would tie in with my curriculum, which is something that we also emphasize in the teacher seminar. So through those emails, through those telephone calls, through interactions, even people come and visit and mention it. And some of them who come to the gallery and are exposed to the gallery through the seminar, and they are aware that we do other educational activities like artist talks, curator talks, and all of that. They will come to those as well, especially a number of the visual arts teachers. Not as much as we would like to see, but a number of them realize that in order to enrich their lessons, it's good to come and listen to hear an artist talk about their own work. They were not aware that the gallery, some of them, again, didn't even know the gallery exists, and A, and B, didn't know that the gallery did those kind of things. And they were like, and the fact that you have an education department, I can organize an interview with the curator and all of those kind of things. So it just opens up a whole new range of possibilities.
Yes, it is definitely.
In terms of taking content from the exhibition and how to utilize the exhibition.
And what you're saying, to be clear, it's not how to teach you to mount an exhibition or a display, but it's how to benefit from the exhibition that are mounted at the gallery and at the other museums, and how to just connect that to your lesson and have your students immersed in it.
Yeah, because one of the ultimate things that you want to do when you teach, is show the connection between the content and life.
Right.
And as I said, by seeing the physical thing that you're talking about, or something that physically emerged from executing a practice or utilizing a material, then it gives you the range of possibilities, and the range of significance starts to change for the student.
Yeah.
If you know that you can take a crayon, in the case of visual arts, and by manipulating the crayon in various ways, by adding a little water to the crayon, by the type of surface that you're rubbing the crayon on, you can create these various visual effects to create a portrait or create a study of something. You start thinking differently about that crayon and start thinking different about the technique of drawing. And instead of just thinking about just being an artist, you can also think about being an architect or a designer. And that's the strength of kind of engaging with an exhibition, just being casually walking through it, trying to pick out a name of who did what, or general information about what X is.
Right.
Just to give another example, if you go to, if you're a music student and you love music and you love reggae for that matter, and you're able to go to Bob Marley Museum, you can always hear Bob Marley, about Bob Marley Day, but you didn't really know the details about his life. You didn't know that Bob Marley really started to kind of make it in music when he was 30-something, rather than 20-something or in his late teens. You basically learned that Bob Marley had a teacher, a music teacher, in terms of Joe Higgs. And he had to practice and he had to do rehearsal. And Joe Higgs carried them go to a cemetery to learn how to deal with them anxiety and fear of being in front of an audience. That's like additional detail that makes the person more interesting and also creates a less focus on the person and starts an application to your own personal life,
Right. Well, definitely, Dwayne
Yeah.
Lyttle. I am thinking about exhibitions in a different light,
Glad
and
to
I
hear
am
it.
sure that our viewers have learned something, and especially for our teachers and our lecturers that come on to see curating culture. I'm sure this was a very useful talk in terms of how you can complement your learning. And for those who are involved in sustainable teaching, sustainable development, how we connect in class learning with outer class learning, exhibitions are definitely an option. So, Dwayne, I'm going to allow you to tell our viewers again how they can contact you, how they can get in touch with the National Gallery and benefit from the use of the exhibition with the recorded webinar that's online and whatever information about the gallery that you can give before we wrap.
Well, before I do that, I want to thank you again for providing this opportunity to talk about a subject that I'm very passionate about.
Yes.
And means a lot, not only to me, but my other colleagues in the Institute of Jamaica who work in other museums and have to man and maintain and communicate various types of exhibitions. With that said, I want to encourage anybody who has seen this or who is seeing this video to think about exhibitions as a learning environment. Not only because you're a teacher, maybe just a general citizen. Lifelong learning is a thing. And going to a space where you can learn something new or add to what you knew before is quite beneficial. But that aside, my conversation today was really geared at teachers, and I would really want to encourage teachers who are in training and those who are practicing to give a second look at how exhibitions can be used educationally. Definitely, we don't want to lose the fact that exhibitions can be seen recreationally, but we definitely want to appreciate the fact that exhibitions can be utilized educationally. They can extend the learning that you do in the classroom. They provide this opportunity to see Jamaican examples of things that you are teaching and talking about. They give students the opportunity to personally engage with a topic or a subject or an object that they probably before had only seen a video image of or a photographic image of. Additionally, it also provides students with an opportunity to add that experiential learning to the book learning that they're getting. And yeah, experience is priceless because you read about something, you look at an image of something, but you can't smell a thing. You can't see the texture on the thing. You can't see how old the thing is. You can't properly get a sense of its size or its physical weight. And also to put that into a context in terms of who were the people that used it, why did they invent it, what was the significance of them utilizing it. That experiential learning is so priceless. And additionally, when you come into an exhibition and you see a number of things or a set of like things together, or even different set of things, you can get a sense of contextualization. You learn how to group things into various types of categories. You are able to put something in a historical context. You are able to put something in a biographical context. And then you can also be able to put that in your own personal context. How would I use that now? How is this important and significant to me? If I was living in that time, I would have to use this versus use what I'm using now. Or how did this thing help to create the way for the thing that I'm using now? So those are some excellent ways of thinking of the value of exhibitions to learning. And as such, I want to encourage you to reach out to the National Gallery of Jamaica. If it is that you want to just reach out generally, it's info@natgalja.org.jm. So you can send a quick email. You can even send your name and telephone number and say you want to have a conversation. Somebody can do a follow-up call with you. If it is that you want to appraise some of the things that we've been doing, we are on Instagram, we are on YouTube, we are on Facebook, and we're on X, formerly Twitter. And you can also Google NGJ blog, our National Gallery of Jamaica blog, and you can go on our blog post, see some of our blog posts. And the blog is excellent because it has biographical profiles of artists there. It has flyers in terms of highlighting when we have exhibition openings, when we're having artist talks. And it also has information on some interesting topics that relate to art in Jamaica and the Caribbean. Sometimes members of the education department will write on a topic that has relevance beyond the biographical and beyond the aesthetic. So, for example, our conservator has posted information on it about how to take care of your art collection during hurricane season, or how to protect them from earthquake and other natural disasters. So that's one thing that you can look at. We've done an exhibition on looking at Kingston and how art illustrates various themes in Kingston. And we've had people just write on Kingston from a visual arts point of view. So those are some very interesting articles that are there that you can take a look at. So I'd encourage you to go on our blog, go on our other social media platforms, reach out to us via the info@natgalja.org.jm email address. And our telephone numbers are easily accessible online or in the telephone directory. So thank you for listening in, and I look forward to hearing from anybody that's interested in hearing more about how they can make exhibitions an educational resource in their teaching practice.
Thank you again, Dwayne Lyttle. So for the month of June, we'll be celebrating the 18th annual Charlestown Maroon Conference and Festival, which runs from June 20th to June 23rd. On the first day, they'll be celebrating the Tinos. The second day will be the bonfire event. The third day is a conference, and on the final day will be the Quao Day. So until next time, thank you for staying with us on Curating Culture, where we curate to educate.
I am waiting for a bus at the end of the night on the street.